why the USCCA exists, because every responsibly armed American should have the training and education to navigate a self-defense situation. And should you ever need it, the 24/7 Critical Response Team is right there for you. To discover more about the USCCA, you need to visit uscca.com/GOR. Act now, because the life you save could be your own. uscca.com/GOR.
Happy Easter, everybody. Welcome, ladies.
Happy Easter, Mike.
Thank you. We have, who do we have? Should we do a Mickey Mouse roundtable and introduce yourself?
Sure.
Alicia, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good, good, good. Happy Easter. And Desi?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Star of local media.
I can give you an autograph later if you want one.
Dave, did you see her on KUSI?
Yeah, I did.
She did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. You're done.
I'm taking over, Mike.
I just didn't want to tell you,
Yeah.
but you're done.
Dave put the word in.
Yeah.
Well, we got all kinds of cool stuff happening today. We're going to talk to Mary Louise, who, I'll go into detail a little bit more, but she's going to be our first guest up. We're going to, of course, talk about the Nathan Fletcher drama, which there is plenty of. And then we have Inland Empire Gun Owners has a joint event with Reform California that's coming up, so we want to talk about that. And, of course, Desi, you're here to talk. What are you here to talk about?
We are here today to talk about the tough conversation to have with your children that parents don't want to have but need to have.
Okay, which is a tough. This sounds like it's going to be a tough segment. So.
It is, but it's going to be worthy.
Good. Okay, so let's go around the horn. First up, San Diego County Gun Owners Executive Director Gail Raymer.
Happy Easter, y'all.
How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm literally standing in one spot in my son's driveway because it's a place I can get reception.
Okay. So what's going on in San Diego?
So in San Diego, coming up this weekend, or this coming weekend, Saturday the 15th, we've got 3 tabletops. Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association tabletop in Escondido, North County Shooting Center tabletop in San Marcos, and the Turner's El Cajon tabletop. And then next week, don't forget, it's our monthly meetings. Tuesday the 18th will be North County. Wednesday will be Mid-Central. And that's going to be at Poway Weapons and Gear this month. And then on Thursday is La Bella.
Nice. And, the tabletops, if you're listening and you're in San Diego, go to our website and please volunteer. Volunteer to help with these tabletops. We set them up. We have somebody there to train you. If you've never done one before, you're never alone. They're amazingly effective. And we need a lot of help. A lot of people really want to, they say, hey, what can I do? I care about the Second Amendment. Well, these tabletops are a perfect example.
Many hands make for small work. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Gail. I'm looking forward to the meetings.
Bye, Gail.
Okay. Next up, Orange County, Heather Hawk, Executive Director. How are you?
I'm good. Happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter. So what's going on in Orange County?
Well, this weekend we had, on Friday night, we went to a barbecue at Low Signature Resource Center, or LSRC. They had a kind of a demo and a tour of their facility, and so we hung out and chatted with a few folks. It was really fun. And then we had a shooting social on Saturday. It was a little different. We didn't have any new shooters, so we had more of like a range day for our members. So they all came out and brought some firearms and shot, and everybody kind of talked. It was a good social gathering there. Nice. And then this coming Saturday, we have a tabletop at Crime Survivors Superhero 5K Walk Run. They have an event in Irvine, and we'll have a booth there. We also have a team if people are interested in signing up and doing the walk run under Orange County Gun Owners Pack /NotMeOC. So you can join our team as well, and we can all go on the run together.
And don't forget, go to gunprom.com because your Second Amendment celebration dinner is coming up on May
20th. Yeah,
May
so
20th.
gunprom.com. Yep, we have tickets available. We have whole tables. We do have individual tickets as well. It's going to be at Orange Hill Restaurant in Orange, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So get your tickets now, get them early, so you've got yourself a spot reserved. And then also quick update on the Irvine City Council. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that they did not include it in their agenda for April 11th. It has been tentatively moved to April 25th. We talked about that last week on Gun Owners Radio. So it's about the safe gun storage ordinance. I will keep everyone posted as I check the week before to make sure it is on that agenda on the 25th, and I'll provide any changes.
Awesome.
If it is or if it doesn't. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather Hawk, Orange County Gun Owners Executive Director. And lastly, but not leastly, is Inland Empire Gun Owners Executive Director Carla Talley is on the line. How are you, Carla?
I'm doing good. How's everyone else?
Fantastic. What's going on in beautiful Inland Empire?
It is a gorgeous day out here today. No rain, lots of sunshine, warm weather. But more importantly, we are having our San Bernardino County CCW seminar Wednesday night on Zoom and on Facebook Live. So tune in if you were looking to get your CCW in San Bernardino County. Just pulling together the last minute things for our monthly meeting on the 22nd out in Canyon Lake this time. It's going to be at a nice pizza place out there called PVA, Oven Fire Goodness. And then on the 29th, one of the reasons why I'm calling in is we're having a town hall called Fighting Crime and Protecting Yourself in South Riverside County. Nice. And that is free to the community. We invite everyone to come out. Just you need to register, though. You need to go to reformcalifornia.org under events or go to iegunowners.org under special events. Go into events, and then down to the bottom it says special events. Go in there. You can click on the graphic that's in there, and it will take you to a website to sign up to go.
iegunowners.com/events, and then go to special events? Okay,
correct.
Good. Yeah, this event's going to be very, very cool. There's going to have some guest speakers. We're going to talk about some of the things that are happening that are impacting people and their safety and some of the public policy decisions that have led to Inland Empire and really most of California being less safe. And why is that important for gun owners? How do gun owners fit in? So we need you to show up. We need you to come and make a big splash. So sign up today and come out and join us. Awesome, Carla. Anything else?
I think that's it for this week.
Well, you are awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, that Reform California / Inland Empire Gun Owners thing is going to be a cool event. Hopefully it's going to be a big event, but it's definitely going to be a cool event. So if you guys, if you have any room on your calendar, what are you doing that day, Dave?
What day? Is it a Saturday or Sunday?
It's a Saturday. Yeah.
I don't know. When is it?
He's always on KOSI.
It's
but that's early in the morning.
Just fell out of my head.
Yeah, I know.
The date just fell out of my head.
I know.
It's
I heard it hit the floor.
It is. Oh, I don't remember. Go to iegunowners.com.
I will do that.
So anyway, well, awesome. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to the show. I'm looking forward to all the stuff we're going to talk about here. I'm definitely looking forward to talk about. Did you follow the Nathan Fletcher emails, Dave?
Oh, goodness gracious.
That's going to be fun. It's
when
gonna be a
you
fun time.
never think it could get any crazier.
It does.
It really, really, really does. Yeah, I had a big major rant on the last of the You Ought to Know show between gas and electric, so I feel much better.
I'm guessing I know what side
Well,
you're
if you're building from the ground up and the inside out, who can afford a $60,000 electric car?
Yeah,
I know. But anyway, I digress. But I felt better because, and I told everybody, I said, this isn't Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not Libertarian. Right. It's America.
Yep.
We need to get our be self-efficient with all our oil and minerals and things like that, and just do our own thing, and then we'll slowly graduate into electric cars. Yeah. And so you can come out with a $10,000 car that's all electric and charges up and gives you 300-mile range, then okay.
Mary Forgues is a violent crime survivor, Second Amendment advocate, marketing mercenary, and a mom of 2 teenagers. All the accolades for me. She is on an unwavering journey to protect and preserve our constitutional rights, and Mary is our next guest, up right after this.
But first, if you own a gun in California, you should have an attorney that specializes in California gun laws on your speed dial. Because if you ever have legal matters that involve firearms, you need California's firearm lawyer, John Dillon, especially if you have questions about red flag laws, gun registration, gun transportation, or maybe you just need to know that your guns are California compliant. Our trusted firearms attorney is John Dillon. John Dillon specializes in California gun laws. Put his number on your phone right now, 760-642-7150. That's John Dillon, California firearms lawyer, 760-642-7150. 7150. Can you imagine police officer pulls you over? Excuse me, can see your driver's license and insurance. Hold on a minute. 760. Could you talk to my lawyer? I wonder if he talked to him.
That's a good
He
question.
might.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Who's our guest?
We have Mary. Mary, are you there?
I am. I'm here.
Hi, Mary. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Mary, you're the Connecticut representative for the DC project, but can you give us an introduction to our audience and tell us a little bit more about you?
Sure. So I actually do a lot. I've been the state director for Connecticut for the DC project for a little over a year now, but I also have been in firearm training since 2017. Previously, more so as like on a marketing level rather than on an instruction level. And after 2019, it became more of on an instruction level. And additionally, I am a 911 emergency dispatcher, so I dispatch police, fire, and medical emergencies here in Connecticut. And I have a small business that is a marketing company. I am a simulation scenario instructor at WAFT down in West Orlando, Florida. And I am a featured writer for Armed Lifestyle magazine.
So what don't you do, Mary? That seems like a better question here.
I do a lot. And on top of all that, I also have 2 teenagers. So
I can't imagine raising 2 teenagers like that right now.
No, it's, I mean, within the mix of everything, I'm going to say that's probably the hardest job is raising teenagers.
I can imagine that.
They keep you pretty busy. So, Mary, you mentioned it seems like going back in history as far as 2017. I'm curious, back in your youth, did you have any exposure to firearms growing up, or was this more of a recent exposure that you've had?
I mean, my grandfather had a revolver when we were growing up, so I was always around a firearm, not so much where I handled one. When my daughter was 2, so in 2008, I had visited with my mother and my stepfather out in Kansas where they had resided, and they had firearms, and I ended up shooting their firearm. You know, they taught me basically my introduction to firearms, like how to handle it and what I'm aiming at, you know? So like it was like the very, very basic fundamentals
Right.
of firearms was in 2008. And then about a decade ago, I ended up getting my permit as a single mother. I was like, you know, I at least have to have the tools available to me if I do need to protect my kids and myself.
So, Mary, what made you dive into the deep end then with firearms? Because it seems like you do a lot with the firearms industry now. So what made you go that route?
So I had my permit, and then in 2019, November of 2019, I was attacked in my home, and I'm a survivor of a violent attack, and I had to pull my firearm in that incident. And since then, I became more of an advocate of the education behind firearms, because at the time, I did have my permit and I did own a gun, but I honestly didn't know much other than I didn't know much of what I was doing other than aiming my gun at somebody to make sure that my life was preserved. So I didn't have any additional training, even like the follow-up of an incident, like how to, when I call the police, how to, inform them on this situation. And I dove into it. And then in 2021, I met with Holly Sullivan from Connecticut. She's the president of the CCDL. And she introduced me to the DC project. And then I met Diana Muller. And it's been a rabbit hole ever since then. So
you bring up a really great, important point, because I think a lot of the public in general is probably about the same place that you were. They think that if they are in a legitimate self-defense situation, they defend their life, they think they're going to be okay. But you bring up a very valid point that it's important to know those follow-up points, what to do, what to say, because it's not so much as easy as you may think. Just because it was a legitimate defense, that you're going to necessarily be okay. You have to know the right way to proceed, and those things are important to know. And that training is important.
Correct. It's, how to handle that situation in those moments, but also how to communicate with officers. And then even like the aftermath a few months after, like that psychological aspect of processing what you went through and how to prevent it from happening again. You analyze how you got into that situation and what you could have done differently. So there's a lot that comes with it. It's that like the the thought process and the education behind it, it doesn't live and die within that moment. It continues for, months, years later, where you're trying to figure it out and then also help other people figure it out.
So, Mary, I know that your story, there's a video up on the DC Project website. I did watch it. I know that others want to see your story as well. Can you kind of share with us where they can find that story if they want to just kind of hear a little bit more background? Because I want to kind of go more into the now, but if they want to hear more of that history, I'd love for you to share where they can find that.
Sure. They could find it at the DC Project, so it's actually dcproject.info. And we also have a docuseries that's being launched this upcoming week. The DC Project's being featured, but it was produced by Jeff Hayes Films. And the DC Project will be sending out emails and putting up updates on their social media as that docuseries is released. And my story is included within that docuseries.
Perfect. So by way of additional training that you were referencing, what do you think is a critical next step? People, they get their fundamentals. They learn how to aim. They learn how to stand. They learn how to load a gun. What would you recommend as a self-defender? Where do we go next with our training? What should be our next steps that we look for?
The next step that we're looking for is, I would say, the medical aspect of it too. Any type of stop the bleed classes, or the mental aspect of it, how to help somebody else that's going through that type of situation or has gone through it. It's really the communication, I'm going to say. It's not always just the wasting ammo down range on a target. It's also, again, how not to even become a target in the first place, how not to be in that situation. So that's what I would say is the continued education. It's not only just wasting ammo, but I would say, like in my situation, the use of low light and barricade training, that would have been a lot more valuable in my incident because it was in my house, it was at nighttime. So again, rather than showing up at the range, buying a box of ammo and going through it, I would say seek training from people that have that, that they've either experienced it. I wouldn't say only military and law enforcement, but seeking that additional training.
Okay, absolutely.
That's what we call purposeful training, right? Like going to the range with an intent on, hey, this is what I want to practice today.
Correct, exactly.
What do you think? What's a major difference that you've noticed between male and female students when it comes to firearms?
Hitting the target.
By the way, all three women just started laughing.
Women listen?
Yeah, that makes me a little
Concerned.
You sure you want to ask that question, Mike?
Dave and I went, yeah, that's a really good question, and all three women started laughing. So, all right, go for it. Unload.
I would say for starters, so when I got my very first gun, it was a Glock 43. I walked into the gun store, and this was before my incident. I walked into the gun store, and the gentleman that works there's actually two of them. They said, "This is the gun that you want," and I was like, "Oh, okay." They just said that this is automatically, this is what I'm going to want, which it was a great firearm, and it saved my life. But they just assumed what was going to fit me rather than saying, let's test drive a few things and what are you comfortable with and, hold this firearm. And so I would say that's a little bit different, is where I feel like women are expected that, you have to fit kind of like a certain mold or expectation within the industry. And then additionally, as far as our clients showing up for training, guys show up, they're in like their cargo pants, their plate carriers, they're completely geared out. And women show up coming from they work at banks or they're teachers. They show up in their regular attire. They're becoming business casual, and they're like, "Hey, this is my gun, and I carry off body, or this is how I carry, and how can I be better with it?" Guys, they're more super. They're pushing it on a tactical level, I'd say.
I go back and forth with. I sometimes wonder if people go a little too far, or on the whole, you got to get the right gun for your hand or whatever.
It's a big deal, though, Mike.
It is, but it feels to me, I go back and forth between it's a big deal, get it right, try 15 guns, blah 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 blah. Good. And the other side is, I think anybody can use any gun, like any issue. Hands are so similar to each other, and guns are so similar to each other. Almost any issue can be worked through with training. I don't think people train enough, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think, like, you know, well, gee, I don't like a Glock because of this, or I don't like a SIG because of that, or I don't like a Shield because of this. My bet is that whatever they don't like can be trained through.
But Mike, you and I are completely different. Look at our hands. My hands are a little bit smaller than yours, sir. And when we talk about females and how we're built differently, right? Like, there's some females out there that have hands half the size of mine, right? 'Cause I'm a tall girl, and you know that. So being able to grip something properly and to actually get that good grip, that's a big deal for a lot of women.
So you know why Mike can say that, though? Because he's a man with big, strong man hands. Man hands can do that.
Right.
Women, small hands that don't have
true.
the grip strength of a man. There's other factors other than, they're to a point, absolutely true. Training to a point, you can make modifications, you can adjust your grip. But if you're talking about making an investment, if it's something you already have, adapt and make it work. But if you're looking to buy, you might as well buy something that fits you. But hand size isn't the only thing to consider too.
Think of arthritis too. Like, I worked with a woman this morning that she had really, really bad arthritis, so she couldn't really grip the gun.
Well, I think the job that the gun's is being bought for us. I think it's a bigger deal than hand size even. But
Absolutely.
Okay, so we got one more segment with you, Mary. I want to talk to you about a few things and get real specific on some things. So can't tell you how much I appreciate you calling in and being with us today. So if you can hang with us while we go to a commercial and come right back.
Orange County Gun Owners is dedicated to preserving and restoring Orange County's self-defense rights. And if you live in Orange County and want to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, you need to join ocgunowners.com/join. Orange County Gun Owners is the Do Something organization to restore and defend the Second Amendment. Volunteer at a shooting social, at a gun shop and tabletop, and help more pro-gun local officials get elected. Save the date. Orange County Gun Prom is May 20th. Become a member today at ocgunowners.com/join.
Mary, thanks so much for being with us. This month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and Desi, with our women's program, has a ton of events lined up that we're going to talk to her about a little bit later. And you were talking, Mary. You said that one of the things that got you more involved was an incident, something that happened, an attack, that you were attacked, I believe, in your home, right?
It was in my home. It was on like I said, November 2019 is Friday night, 9:00 at night, and I was home alone. So it was the place I was supposed to feel the safest. That's where I got attacked.
And I wanted it, so on a macro level, kind of, from 30,000 feet, it got you more involved. It got you more dedicated to teaching others, a little deeper into the subject of firearms and that sort of thing, which I think is awesome. I can't tell you how much we appreciate all the hard work that you do. But I'm curious, what kind of impact and what kind of changes have you experienced and seen in yourself on more of a day-to-day basis, being attacked in the place where you're supposed to feel most safe?
I'm going to say I constantly lock my doors. Even though that the house was broken into, I now have 2 locks on both entry spots in my house. And then I say on the day-to-day, I'm making sure that I'm having that dialogue going with other women gun owners that aren't necessarily, conservatives or Republicans, but anybody in any type of, with any political affiliation or no political affiliation. I'm having that dialogue on a daily basis of helping other women get involved with, as far as sharing their testimony, reaching out to representatives, even if it's just meeting with them, at the range and just doing one-on-one. But I'm just trying to help other people with the resources that I have, really, the resources that have become available to me in the past few years. That's how I'm applying it on a daily basis.
How was it navigating the aftermath?
At what aspect, like mentally or?
All the above. Really, honestly, I think I'm most curious about mentally. What was it like trying to navigate that? But also, if you could just kind of touch on the legalities and the logistics of everything after. But primarily, I'm really curious how you were able to get past it, or was it not that hard? What kind of work did you have to do to get past that mentally? Because that's huge.
So I'm going to say, mentally, in the beginning, the first couple of weeks, it felt more of like a shock. And I don't think I actually fully processed it. And again, so this is end of 2019. I talked about it, but I didn't have a lot of emotional reaction to it and say like, holy crap, this happened to me, until March of 2020 when COVID hit. And I was in the restaurant industry at the time, and I was laid off from COVID and about a week being home alone, with my kids, obviously, but having those days off where I actually started to process it. I was like, I really need to actually talk to a therapist and process what happened here, because not that I was ignoring it, but I also was working, 2 full-time jobs and raising my kids. I went into more like a survivor mode on that aspect, where I didn't allow myself to dive into it much, as far as on a recovery level, until a few months after it happened.
I would just imagine, like, it would not be unusual or surprising if, I mean, this is probably something you think about all the time still. I mean, from maybe like when you're just turning a corner, inside your house, or when you're outside your house, or I would imagine, there are times I think, okay, I got to go run a quick errand. I got to go pick up a gallon of milk or whatever at the store. I don't have my gun on me, whatever. I'm just going to go. And I think to myself, no, you really should. Well, what if this is blah, blah, blah. I'll bet you that conversation in your head is far more serious and dire. I would guess that when you leave the house, that there's no way you're leaving without protection.
Correct. And so if I'm not leaving, I'll leave my house at least with a gun. And if I can't carry my gun with me wherever I'm going, because I live in Connecticut, I'll at least have a knife on me, which I've never carried a knife before until after this incident. So that was a whole new, addition to accessories to my daily life, but also for protection purposes, was I started carrying a knife on me. I also realized, at least once a day in the beginning, and then every other day, I was looking for this guy's obituary to see if he had died, because he's actually a drug addict and an alcoholic, and he was in and out of programs. So even after this incident, because there's an ongoing court case, I would constantly find myself Googling to see if he was even still alive. So that it took up my daily life, whereas it became a routine. I wanted to see where he was at, because I thought he could come out at any time again, even though it wasn't expected the first time. He could come out of nowhere again and attack me.
Is that a real fear, or is that a?
It was, and he actually ended up passing away April 2021. So it kind of died since then. When he died, that fear died. But I was having nightmares about it, and they were really demented nightmares up until he passed away.
Wow.
So.
And did all that, was it pointed specifically at him, or do you find yourself looking at humanity differently? You know what I mean? Do you look at strangers differently?
Absolutely looking at humanity differently, because previously I was more involved. There's an organization called 22 Kill, and it's focused on helping veterans that are struggling with certain things. And this person was a veteran that was struggling with substance abuse. And I, unfortunately, really, really strong unfortunate, was I stepped back from helping people after this incident. And previously I was a huge advocate, because, my brother had gone through some things after getting out of the Marine Corps, and that was where my advocacy really, stayed previous to this incident. And then after this, I was like, I don't want to help anybody anymore, because it makes me vulnerable.
And Mary, based off of what you experienced, what can our listeners, or should our listeners, take away from your story?
I would say take those preventative courses, if it's an option where you live, is just take courses of how to read people as far as body language, or how to handle, I would say take like a mental health advocate type of course, or a crisis first aid course, where you're able to apply verbal judo and communicate with somebody that's in a crisis situation. Because a lot of times people that are attacked, they're attacked by somebody that is obviously going through a mental crisis. And if you're able to have that verbal judo and at least create a distance from that person, from your attacker, then you have a lot more opportunity to not have to go through the aftermath of a crisis. So I would say before focusing just on the firearms and the training, take a verbal judo type of course.
I think that's a great takeaway. Is there a part of you that looks back and thinks, wow, I got through this, I survived it, I made myself better, better prepared, more knowledgeable because of it? Is there a part of you that is proud of yourself?
Of course, there's the majority of me is proud of myself. Definitely, because in my situation, I say when I'm telling my story, when you go on the dcproject.info, but in my incident, I'm being attacked and I'm thinking, I'm going to be left for dead. And then my proudest part of my attack was defending my daughter more than defending myself.
Jeez.
So I think that's where I take the most pride in my traumatic incident, was that I saved my kid's life.
So part of DC Project is you talk to politicians, you talk to elected officials, specifically in DC. When you talk to politicians or elected officials that aren't on your side, they aren't really strong on Second Amendment issues, and you tell them your story, how do they react?
It's hit or miss. Just a few months ago, I'm going to say about 2 months ago, I actually testified at the Capitol here in Connecticut, so up at Hartford. And it wasn't a politician, but it was somebody he's the founder of an organization called Connecticut Against Gun Violence, so CPAGV. And similar to like the Moms Demand Action with the red shirts, except he has the orange shirts. So he tried to use me as an example for himself, saying that, if I had my gun locked up right next to my bed, then I would have not have been in such a traumatic incident.
What?
But,
wait. Explain that to me. What's his rationale?
So his thing was that, because obviously he's pushing for safe storage laws. So he said, if she had her gun locked up next to her bed, she still would have been safe because it would have been right next to her bed. But I said, you don't get to choose where you get to attack, where you're going to get attacked. So if I had gotten attacked in my kitchen, I still need to be my gun still needs to be quickly accessible. So there's been arguments with that. There's been, this past September, I went down and I shared my story with Blumenthal's office down in DC. Blumenthal's office actually entertained our conversation. They invited us to that table for that discussion and to talk about the Second Amendment. So it was a lot more welcoming, which I was surprised with. But Chris Murphy's office, you walk into his office and they have zero interest at all. It doesn't matter if you're, that one of those 2 million lives that saved your life with a firearm that year. Doesn't matter what statistic you fall under. If you don't fall under their statistic, that fits their narrative, really. So they had no interest in even having that conversation with me.
Wow. Were they rude about it or polite about it? Or I'm just curious.
They were pretty rude about it. They
Jerks.
Murphy's office completely shut me down.
Wow.
They wouldn't even make eye contact. They were like, we entertained the conversation with you because, that's kind of our job here. But at the same time, we don't have any interest in talking about it. So they're very much strong on gun storage laws.
I don't know this, but I'll bet you Murphy was real vocal with the whole, Me Too and Believe Women, and when all that happened, I'll bet you everybody in his office was very supportive. And here you have an empowered woman who was a victim, and did something about it and was able to defend herself. And they won't even listen to you, and in fact, rude. I don't know where if they were vocal on it or not, but I'm willing to bet they probably were. What a bunch of
No, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, when you walk into Chris Murphy's office, the very unfortunate thing before that conversation even starts is that his walls are painted green for Sandy Hook. He has the memorials up for Sandy Hook and everything. So he already has his mindset, and his staffers already have their mindset of as far as the Second Amendment. So it's really hard to have that conversation with them because they already have their mindset made up.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for talking to us. Is there a website you want to promote, or where should people learn more?
Sure. So on a political level, if you want to get involved with just sharing your story, providing testimony, that would be dcproject.info. And then if you're looking at doing any type of scenario training with myself and my coworkers, that would be waft.com, which is WOAfricanFrankT.com.
Hey, want to go flying?
Yeah.
Did you know we have a world-class flight training school right here in San Diego? Pilots can fly almost every day, thanks to our weather. And it is the best place to fly in the world. Learn to fly with San Diego Flight Training International. Check out this deal, just for Gun Owner Radio listeners. 1 hour of ground school, 1 hour of flight, actual fly with the instructor. Normally, that's $400, but for listeners, $50 off, $350. Getting started is real easy. Give them a call at 858-569-1822 or go to Learn to Fly with SDFTI, or I would just call them at 858-569-1822.
So a couple weeks ago, Nathan Fletcher said that he was dropping out of his race for state senator because he wanted to deal with some personal issues, and I immediately sniffed. Something was fishy. There was no way with his ego and ambition.
And he's been out. How long has he been out of the military?
Over a decade.
Thank you very much.
It's not an excuse anymore.
So, well, I got to tell you, it's just because of who he is, and what I know of him, what people know of him. And it was clearly an excuse. He was clearly trying to get out in front of a story. That's exactly what happened. So the next day,
big story,
huge story, being accused of not just sexual harassment, but sexual assault.
Yeah,
accused by more than one person of sexual harassment.
Not just one.
It's really, really bad. So that was 2 weeks ago. So last week, it'd been a week. And I thought, well, gee, if anybody else in San Diego County, I should say, if Mara Elliott had been, and she's the city attorney for San Diego, had her office been made aware of anybody in San Diego County who was being accused, of sexual assault in court, sexual harassment, and was admitting to being, mentally unstable, and dealing with an addiction problem, anybody else, gun violence restraining order,
without a shadow of a doubt.
And I know, because I used to know him. I know he had a gun, and I heard through the grapevine he had a CCW. So I know he was a gun owner.
Right.
So I'm going, all right.
But he doesn't want to lose that.
Well, so I'm trying. All right. Well, let's see what happens. So last week I sent a letter to the sheriff, Kelly Martinez, to the district attorney, Summer Stephan, to Mara Elliott, and to the police chief, San Diego police chief, Dave Neaslett, saying, hey, look, pointing out what I just pointed out. He's admitting to this. He's being accused of that. So I'm assuming he's lost the CCW by now, and I'm assuming there's a gun violence restraining order happening. So let's check on that progress. Now, Sheriff Martinez is wonderful on Second Amendment issues. Summer Stephan is great on Second Amendment issues. I actually met with her last week, coincidentally, about something else. So, their response was fine. And, the sheriff indicated that it's being they really legally can't tell us. They can't say, oh, this personal, issue, they can't tell us. But he's going to lose his CCW.
He has to.
He's going to lose his CCW.
Because you know what? I know this guy who won't leave it alone.
Well,
I just know this guy. I have to introduce you to him. He's a hell of a nice guy.
Well, but
Is his name Michael
right?
Schwartz?
Yeah.
Do you know that guy?
Well, I already know that it's happening. But Mara Elliott, she responded and said, "Look, she 100% focused on the PTSD claim, that he's making, and the addiction, and basically said, hey, look, we're not going to issue a gun violence restraining order on him," and went on to talk about how we really shouldn't stigmatize people that are dealing with addiction and post-traumatic stress.
What? That's the basis of this.
I was appalled. The amount of empathy she had for Nathan and the complete lack of mention of his alleged victims is appalling. Absolutely appalling. Now, I have seen, of course, I drafted a response. You can see the response on San Diego County Gunowners.com, or you can go to our Facebook page or our Instagram and you can see the response. But I pointed out that she has been extremely aggressive at, issuing gun violence restraining orders, according to her. She's constantly bragging about, some new milestone, 500, 600, 700, 1,000, So, she's extremely aggressive when it comes to issuing. And there have been far milder cases. There's a far lower bar, for people who aren't named Nathan Fletcher. I've seen people, I've heard of people who come to the organization looking for help who were in a divorce and, things got heated and, accusations were made. Next thing you know,
boom,
the wife who caught the husband cheating, she's got a gun violence restraining order against her. And then when the husband came forward and said, hey, you know what, I need to retract my statement. I was just emotional and I shouldn't have said that. And they said, well, if you retract it, we're going to prosecute you for filing a false police report. And went forward with the gun violence restraining order, which the judge threw out and said, this is asinine, ridiculous, and stupid. I've seen and heard of, firsthand from people who had this guy had a gun violence restraining order issued against him for posting an offensive dark humor meme on Facebook. And he was kind of, I guess, what we could gather, he was kind of the weird guy in the office anyway, and nobody really liked him. Lost his job. Lost his guns, thousands of dollars in legal fees. So for her to suggest that she's worried about stigma, or for her to suggest that this doesn't meet her minimum criteria is completely and totally bogus. She did not issue this gun violence restraining order because he is her political ally and friend.
Well, of course. So did you, and you responded.
That was the response. So I basically said, look, and a lot of people, I get the thought of, hey, yeah, let's gun violence restraining order this guy, because he's a jerk. That really was never the intention. I don't want him gun violence restraining ordered. I don't want anybody.
He could snap.
And so the next ask for the letter, I want everybody to get Nathan Fletcher treatment. I want everybody in San Diego County to get that level of consideration.
And did you write her a letter and say, I want to thank you, now you've changed your attitude and you'll be more benevolent when somebody gets into a situation?
No, the letter, and again, you can see the letter. No, I specifically asked, I want everyone to get the Nathan Fletcher treatment. Stop issuing gun violence restraining orders. You're odd by not issuing. She's admitting that, hey, I don't want to ruin this guy's life. He's my friend. I don't want to ruin his political life. I don't want to ruin his personal life. He's my friend. Yeah, these things ruin lives.
Yeah, funny thing.
That's exactly what happens.
That.
Now,
and you ruined how many? 1,000?
Over.
A lot.
Now the other thing, there's two other points, but one, you'll like this if you haven't read the letter yet. I asked specifically, well, okay, if there is some sort of list of offenses that someone can commit and then face no consequences from her office as long as they claim PTSD or alcoholism, we'd like her to publish that list. We need to know, like what offense can I do? What crime can I commit? And then say, PTSD and alcoholism, and then no, consequence free. Because that's not even an interpretation of what she was saying. It's almost exactly what she was,
Have you gotten a response?
Saying. Well, it would be a response to my response. I sent my initial letter on Wednesday. Thursday, I got responses from everybody. Friday, I sent my response to Mara Elliott. So if I get a response to response, we'll see. But I'm on KUSI tomorrow to talk more about it.
Are you going to do it?
Oh, yeah. And but I really want to emphasize, we don't like gun violence restraining orders. We knew from the beginning.
You were going to be terrible.
There was no question in my head. Number one, I knew she wasn't going to issue a gun violence restraining order. Number two, I knew she wasn't going to do anything because I asked. We don't have any influence over Mara Elliott. She's as anti-gun as the day is long.
Right.
So I knew, hey, put this out there. She's going to admit no, she's not going to issue, and then boom. Now it shows, look at the subjectivity of this thing.
Right.
These things are dangerous and horrible.
Right.
So we want everybody. So now the narrative going forward, the message from all gun owners in San Diego should be, we want Nathan Fletcher treatment.
Okay, so you're moving tonight. Where are you going?
What do you mean?
Well, you can't stay in your house.
Mike doesn't have a house right now, remember?
I know, and I think that's why he does this.
I'm like a turtle.
He does that on purpose.
So I'm not, believe me, Dave.
What about
I'm not worried
Martinez?
about anything.
What about Martinez?
She was wonderful. She
But I mean, can she
Help?
Can she do anything, or does it have to be?
Well,
Mark?
her part of it was she said, "Hey, licensing is investigating to see whether or not he gets to keep his CCW." Fantastic, And
At
Summer
least they're going to look into it.
Summer Stephan was great. Dave Neeslet, the San Diego PD chief of police, was wonderful. I can't say enough. He called me up. What a gentleman! What a fantastic guy! What a positive influence in San Diego. I cannot say enough good. He's the only not elected guy, right? His boss is. Todd Gloria and all the elected.
yeah.
So there's not a whole lot, but what a great guy. San Diego, you are blessed to have a good police chief.
Inland Empire gun owners strive to be the ounce of prevention in the fight for your gun rights. How do they do it? They do it by fundraising and getting local pro-gun candidates elected. Become a member today. Go to iegunowners.com/join and join the growing number of responsible gun owners stepping up to defend our Second Amendment rights. That's iegunowners.com/join.
Gun Owners Radio Range Day on April 23rd. Desi, you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, of course. So on April 23rd, we have planned a very fun range day out at one of our outdoor ranges. We're going to have some shooting on steel. We're going to have some really cool guns from Gunfighter Tactical out there to test out. We're going to be doing some moving and shooting. And it's just going to be a great, fun afternoon for us to go outside and shoot together. Hopefully the weather is going to be beautiful out. So really looking forward to it. Rich and I put a lot of work into planning this very special event, and I can't wait for it to kick off.
Gunfighter Tactical is going to be there. They're awesome. They have their new PCC, which is an AR pistol. PCC is it's like an AR in pistol caliber, right?
Yep.
You know what that is? Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure. And then also Franklin Armory is going to have products there for demo, and Ex Nihilo is going to be there. Which I found out is Latin for something, and I forgot what it's Latin for, but one of our listeners emailed and said, this is how you pronounce it, and this is what it means. So yeah, it's $100 normally, right? But if you're a 10-ring member, it's only $20.
Yes, sir.
You have any room left?
I mean, I might take some bribes that if someone still wants to join us, then, I'll take cash bribes if anybody wants to.
All right, good.
Or ammo.
Subscribe and win. Our winner this week is, of course, if you go to gunownersradio.com, you subscribe to our email list, you could win a cool special prize. This week's winner is Troy Stepp. Congratulations, Troy. We'll get a hold of you and figure out how to get your cool prize to you. So you could win free training, Stretch Tactical 2-Day Advanced Pistol, May 21st. All you got to do is enter the drawing at gunownersradio.com. and then /training, the number 4 members. So gunownersradio.com/training, number 4 members.
All right, Mike, you've teased it a couple weeks in a row. I gotta give it.
Go.
Ex nihilo. It means from or out of nothing.
Yes.
There you go.
What
There
she
you go.
said.
And it's Latin, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. What else here? Okay, so let's talk about, why don't you touch on, Desi, what are some of the events that are coming up for Not Me? This month is
Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and so I've developed a campaign of special events throughout the month. And last week I had my virtual CCW seminar with the ladies of Not Me, and I had about 10 ladies on there, which was a great little small group. I always love that because they always ask some great questions, very eager to learn. So I'll be making sure those ladies are going through the process to, of course, apply for their CCW. And this week is our pepper spray and situational awareness class with none other than the Alisha.
Oh.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about what that class is going to entail, Alisha?
Sure. So, a lot of the kind of things that were touched on a little bit with Mary on the earlier segment, we're going to talk about the situational awareness things. We're going to talk about de-escalation. We're going to talk about just overall awareness. And then we are going to move into should all of those measures not be enough, taking those next steps. Sometimes a firearm is not always the right answer. And so we're going to talk about the option of OC spray, how and when to use it, when is it appropriate, when is it not, and if it is, how to do it.
If a firearm's not the right answer, are you asking the right question?
Well, we like to talk about less than lethal options because if we think
that makes more
about
sense.
Orange is not my color.
yeah, not my color either. Teal is, of course, but orange not so much. But we like to promote, other forms of self-defense for, of course, the ladies of Not Me. We focus on firearms specifically. but we also understand that not everybody has a CCW right now, and taking that step to get their CCW, it's a very big decision, right? And to carry and have the mindset, there's a lot that goes into that. So I really like to promote other forms of self-defense, because having more tools in your tool belt is just going to make you feel that much more confident and empowered to protect yourself should a situation arise. And what was really interesting about the conversation with Mary earlier, she touched on a lot of things, again, that Alicia's going to cover with us in these classes. And, you know, every time I've taken this class, because, well, I attend all the classes that we put on for the girls of Not Me, I always take away something new from all these classes. And I find myself being more aware in my surroundings and my situations. Even it's just the little things like walking to and from the grocery store. Like, I'm never on my cell phone. Like, I'm always scanning the parking lot and making sure that, you know, I'm aware of anybody that's out there. And if they start walking at me, you know, then I beelining the other way or tell them to back off. But
Back off.
But
think
yeah,
that's awesome.
These are great classes. And then next week we're doing an image-based decision making. So this is kind of part 2 to the pepper spray class. And Alisha, I know you're a trainer for that class as well. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that class consists of?
Sure. It's basically images are going to be presented. They're predetermined images that the instructor will decide to lay out. And what's kind of interesting is that as instructors, we're taught to kind of type our people, so to get to know our students, and we know how to affect them. So we're going to pick scenarios that are appropriate. And we put the people in the scenario, and when appropriate, we'll give background. We may give background information, situations that you may be in. It may be that you have your arms loaded down at the groceries. It might be that it's a dark night, there's no street lights. Whatever the situation may be, we're going to present you with a visual card that shows what you see. And then you have to make a very good first decision. And we give you generally 5 seconds to make that first good decision. And we'll talk to you about your options ahead of time, what your options may be and what the mindset can be. And what's really great about it is it gets a little bit of adrenaline going, and there are times to where everybody just wants to, especially in the 2A community, we always, a gun, I'm going to pull a gun because I got to pull a gun. That's not always the right answer. No. Sometimes that right answer is not getting involved.
Walk away.
Sometimes being a good witness, making a call. It just depends. And so it's really kind of putting you in the middle of not knowing what's going to be thrown your way, and just kind of giving you that opportunity to make some good choices.
I actually got a lot of feedback from our discussion last week where we talked about, I think it was last week, was it 2 weeks ago, where we talked about, is there a difference between the criteria for brandishing and the criteria for, for basically using your firearm, I guess is probably I forget how I asked the question. I asked it a really great way last week, but we talked about...
That was last week, though, Mike.
Yeah. It led to a very interesting discussion on, what it means. How do you... What's the criteria for pulling from concealment, which I thought was really great. I thought it was a really good discussion. We got a lot of positive feedback on it. So.
Well, and as you guys know, in California, if you have to brandish your firearm, or even if you have to use your firearm, your consequences are detrimental here. Like, regardless, you're going to court for civil and for criminal, right? And so we try to help teach other options so you don't, firearms is the last resort for us, right? And we want to make sure that we're not putting these individuals, and especially ourselves, into these situations where we have to use our firearms to defend ourselves, because to Alicia's point, firearms isn't always the answer. Like, there might be a way to just de-escalate it verbally, kind of like what Mary talked about, like learning these different verbal cues and how you can de-escalate situations. Pepper spray is a less than lethal way to eliminate situations, and the consequences aren't nearly as bad as your firearm. So firearms should be a last resort, and you should take other precautions in case you can, right?
And if you attended our monthly meetings, I think it was last month when we had
the attorney.
The attorney come and talk about. It was 2 months ago, where he talked about how someone brandished. He was being physically attacked. He brandished. It stopped the attack. So he reholstered. But then this other guy called the cops and made a big deal. And he was actually prosecuted. He won. The jury made the right decision, but he was still prosecuted. He went through 8 months of court and thousands of dollars in legal fees. And
that was just because he brandished. That was even pulling the trigger.
The only charges were related to brandishing. And I met with the district attorney. Gary was there, and we talked about how that whole case. And it was a very good conversation. And Summer is extremely thoughtful. She's a very good district attorney. And I think that our point was, look, there are 11,000 people out there and counting.
With CCWs.
With CCWs. Yep. And what this guy did was fairly textbook. So they need to figure it out because it clearly wasn't illegal. So they need to figure it out in the DA's office. And they were very open to that. I mean, I say that. It was a very pleasant and good conversation. But anyway, so I think we're going to see some progress on that. And the reason I bring that up is if you brandish, you were saying, hey, you're probably going to, civil and criminal court. You're right. But I'm hoping one day it won't be like that. If you're defending yourself, it's really the DA has a lot of discretion. So anyway,
Maybe not in our lifetime, though.
well, in my lifetime, which is
No.
Yeah.
might be a little shorter than I don't know.
And then the final event for this month, of course, is a great special cocktail hour with Sheriff Martinez, where she's going to talk about what she's doing in San Diego to combat sexual assault and things to expect if something happens and other resources for our individual. So really looking forward to that. She's a big supporter, of course, of San Diego County gun owners and NOTMESD. So looking forward to chatting with her in a couple weeks.
Okay, so next segment, let's talk about let's do your segment.
Yep.
But then Alicia, let's do your curtain call in the segment after that.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Is there a better tool that empowers a woman to defend against an attacker that's 100 pounds heavier? No. Well, then that's why it's so important for women to learn how to defend themselves with the most effective self-defense tool ever invented. For women led by women, the Not Me program is designed to help with training, purchasing a gun, and getting a concealed carry permit. And guess what? It's totally free. You need to sign up. Just go to notmesd.org. The program is also available in Orange County and Inland Empire. Get help today, notmesd.org.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for the intro, Dave. So today we're here to talk about how to have that tough conversation with your children about what sexual assault and rape actually is. I know this is something that some parents might not think about, and I personally am not a parent. I don't have kids myself, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I just think this is a very tough conversation that a lot of parents know they should have, but typically might not have that with their children. But I think that with the way things are today, think about this. Whenever we grew up, we were told not to get in cars with strangers, right? Like it was stranger danger.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we get into Ubers based off of the fact that they were close to us and they have a 5-star Uber rating, right? So things have definitely changed over time with the way we interact with strangers and people that we've never met before. But I feel that the conversation that parents need to have with their children about being safe and what constitute as an okay touch versus an inappropriate touch are things that are definitely they have not changed over time, right? So parents are surrounded by messages about child sexual abuse. Talk shows and TV shows, of course, warn parents about the dangers at schools and in homes and on the internet. But despite all the media coverage, parents don't get much advice about how to talk to their children about sexual abuse and how to prevent it. So I'm talking to all the parents out there about this, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, of course, because NOTMESD, this is what we do for adult women, of course, but these things can happen as very early age with, young children too. So we want to really kind of start to have that conversation earlier with our kids to make sure that they are aware of what can happen in these certain situations. And so as you start to have these, chats with them, they kind of take this with them, of course, into adulthood. So we're hoping that by having these types of conversations, we can help prevent future sexual assaults. So a couple of things that we really want to talk about when you're having that talk with your children, right? So talk to your children about sexuality and sexual abuse in age-appropriate terms. So depending on how old your child is, use terms that they're, familiar with. Like you wouldn't want to have that same conversation that you would with a 5-year-old, with your 12-year-old and your 16-year-old. So it definitely is a different talk track to have with different age groups. And you want to talk openly and direct about sexual teachings and teach children that it's okay to talk to you when they have questions, right? A lot of times parents can seem kind of embarrassed and, I don't want to talk about sex or anything like that, right? But having those open dialogues with your children and letting them know it's okay to come to me and ask for questions if you have them, that's something to have that kind of open door policy that's going to get them to be more comfortable around you to ask those types of questions. Of course, teaching children the names of different body parts so they have that language to ask questions and express concerns about specific body parts. Teaching children about some parts of their body that are private and no one else should be touching. I hate to say it, right? Let children know that other people should not be touching or looking at their private parts unless they need to be touched in a provided care. So like at a doctor's office or a nurse's clinic, right? And if someone does need to touch them there, a parent or trusted, a trusted caregiver should be there with them. Tell children that if someone tries to touch them in those private areas or wants to look at them, or someone tries to show that child their own parts, then they should tell a trusted adult as soon as possible, because that's not appropriate. And all children should be told that it's okay to say no to touches that make them feel uncomfortable. And if someone touches them in ways that make them feel uncomfortable, they should definitely tell someone as soon as possible. This can lead to some slightly embarrassing situations, such as a child saying they don't want to give a relative a hug or a kiss, right? Like, you could take that in a completely different wrong way, but it's letting your child know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And work with your child to find ways to greet people that don't involve uncomfortable kinds of touches, right? Such as a handshake or, a side hug, like some of us like to do, right? And you want to be able to talk openly about sexuality and sexual abuse. Also teaches children things they don't need to be secret. Abusers will sometimes tell a child that the abuse is secret and don't tell your parents or don't tell, your trusted caregiver, and let your children know that if someone is touching them or is talking to them in ways that make them feel uncomfortable, that they shouldn't keep it a secret, right? So having that open dialogue with your children and letting them know it's okay to tell me things, even if someone told you it was a secret. And make sure your child that if they do tell you something, they're not going to get into trouble. I know a lot of times children don't want to tell their parent that they did something or something happened because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble with their parents, and they don't want their parent to get them in trouble for that. And another thing to keep in mind too, when having these, tough talks with your children, is don't talk about it all in one big talk, right? Like, you want to be able to have these conversations very openly and consistently if possible. So that way they know that it's okay to have these, kind of conversations with you and ask you these types of questions. And one of the things that I can't stress more about having these kind of conversations with your children is be available. Make sure that you have the time to spend with your child, to have that open dialogue, and let your child know that they can come to you with any kind of questions that they might have or concerns. And be sure to follow up with your children. Like, after these conversations, kind of check in and make sure that they heard everything that you were talking about and that they understand these things that, you were discussed. And so I think that if we can help have, parents have these conversations a lot earlier in life, this is going to help them as they go into adulthood, because these types of situations are real, and sexual assault happens to a lot of women, right? Like, the statistics show that 1 in 3 women will be a victim of sexual assault at some point in her lifetime. So if we can start grooming these young women to understand what sexual assault looks like and what to kind of be aware of, then I'm hoping that we can just save a couple more women from having to go through that situation.
Well, I think it's more important today than it's ever been.
100%.
Because you got schools now teaching what they want these kids to learn.
It's their narrative.
Right. And that's exactly.
It's their narrative.
And you have to combat that.
It's hard enough for a grown woman to come forward and to let the truth be known. Imagine as a youth, how much more challenging that's going to be. They're going to be, they're still trying to learning to navigate the world and, kind of see authority and who do we trust, who do we not, and who do we respect, and who do we, and how do we cross those barriers sometimes when those we respect are the ones that are doing the damage and the harm. So that's a lot for a child to navigate.
And if you think about, too, the mental kind of repercussions that happen, like think about Mary's story and how she is still kind of recovering from this. If a young girl or even boy, has something happen to them at a very, very young age, it makes a very deep impression on them, because children are very impressionable. So if you think about a situation where, let's just say, a young girl unfortunately was sexually assaulted, she's going to feel that for basically the rest of her life. And it's going to take a lot of working through that, both mentally, to kind of get to the point where she can handle that. And so children are very impressionable. So by having those conversations, helps them kind of understand that this is not okay and this is okay. And if this person touches me this way, that's all right. But if, grandma gives me a hug and a kiss on the cheek, then that's okay, right? So it's really trying to help them understand the differences of what is appropriate touching and what is inappropriate touching. And if you think, do you have something to say, Mike?
No.
So if you think too about, sorry, I sound Barb's Mike. If you think about the shooting socials, and when we do our safety briefs, I know, Alicia, you do this and I do this too. We tell the women that we might be touching your shoulders and we're never going to touch you inappropriately, right? It's because we're setting the stage for, hey, like, we're going to be moving you around a little bit, but it's always going to be, just on your shoulders, your arms, etc., right? So we kind of preface it that to help them understand that, all right, they're not going to be inappropriate touching you, right? Whenever, especially at the gun range. And so I just think that this information and being able to have these conversations is just, it's going to help kind of imprint on these kids, right, for the rest of their lives. And so having those conversations, again, I've never had them before because I don't have kids, but I can understand that it might be tough to say, hey, this is what sexual assault is. This is what, rape is. And the definition of rape is a type of sexual assault involving sexual intercourse or other forms of sexual penetration against a person without their consent. And that can happen at a very, very early age. And we've heard of cases of these young, kids being, raped. And it's very, very unfortunate those situations happen. But then you carry that into adulthood. And again, the mental repercussions that can come from this kind of stuff. I mean, it's the ripple effect, and the ripple effect of an event like that happening is not a good one. And so if we can help prevent that and give them the tools to understand what can happen, what cannot happen, I think it's just going to make that impact on these kids.
The numbers are staggeringly high.
It's ridiculous.
I can't.
And those are the ones we know.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yep.
it's very underreported. Is my understanding.
63% go unreported.
I don't know. Well, how do you know that? Like, how can you tell?
It's a statistic.
Yeah.
I looked it up, Mike. Come on.
It was on Facebook.
But how
Right,
can you,
it was
how-
on Facebook.
How can you quantify how many have been? I mean, once you figure that out, aren't they reported anyway? So
I see your logic.
I wonder if we just talk more about this stuff, and that's why you hear more. But golly, the numbers, the stories, there's sexual assault is it's so prevalent in society.
It was so secretive for so long.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's so much more. I think you were right in that it's more talked about. I think
it's because we have a lot of scandals
but-
that come out now, right? Like, think
Right.
about the Jeff Epstein scandal. And now with Nathan Fletcher, he has someone that's filing a sexual assault against him too, right?
Two people. Well,
let's talk about the Epstein thing for a moment.
That was a whole story. You can watch all that on Netflix.
But see, would you truly
No.
classify that as sexual assault?
No, because they were consenting.
Exactly. They were
Right.
flying to the
No.
island.
No.
The underage.
Yeah,
The
if you're-
underage.
There's no such thing as consent under the age of 18.
Well,
Yeah.
legally.
So that's
But if a 13 or 15-year-old girl says, heck yeah, let's do it.
well, that's
That's
not
di-
okay.
I mean, it's
Well,
still
I
not
know it's
considered
not.
okay.
I'm not saying that it's okay.
No. But I mean, that's not. It's considered.
There's still
assault.
pressure involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's kind of like a boss and an employee or something like that, right? Well, gee, they have the power to hire and fire or whatever. Same kind of type of thing. Well, the adult is automatically in an authority position.
Well, yeah, but
so
all I'm saying is,
But you know what's crazy? The reason I think that maybe it's increasing is the number of people who commit these acts who were victims. You know what I mean? So a victim turns into, in many cases, turns into someone that commits these acts. So I almost wonder if, is this thing just spreading?
are we
Hard to say.
ever going to know?
I don't think so.
I don't
But you have to think too, Mike. 8 out of 10 cases, the person knew the individual that sexually assaulted them. It's ridiculous. That could be a relative or a friend of the family, right? So just things to keep in mind. And again, parents out there, I know this is a hard conversation to have, but I definitely recommend having it. If you have any questions, I might not be the person to go to, but I can give you resources.
Right. The idea is to have these conversations early before there's a problem.
Exactly.
And like you were saying, use the terms that are appropriate for within your family, and it's done within the confines and the comfort of the home. And that way, if something ever does happen, the child is more likely and hopeful to feel comfortable to come forward. But if you wait until you start to see signs of a problem,
it's too late.
It's going to be more difficult.
Hey, a lot of companies waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. Their designs are great. The photos are beautiful. Your website really looks great on the phone, but it's not getting customers. Why? Because you don't have the words that make people buy. But now you can fix that with Sage Tree. Sage Tree can help you find the words that make it easy for your customers to understand what to do and how to buy from you. Stop wasting money today and schedule a call. Getting started is easy. Visit sagetree.com. Click on the schedule an appointment button. That's sagetree.com and click on that schedule a call button and you will be happy forever.
Yeah. We use Sage Tree. They're wonderful. Highly recommend. Anybody that has any kind of business they're looking to promote and they have a website or they don't have a website, call
need
Sage
help.
Tree. They do a great job. So, Alicia, we're going to do a curtain call.
Sure.
What do you got?
So, let me flip on over. So we have just a story, comes out of Houston. So as we know, I want to always preface, and a big part of, just a mindset and a thought that I have is that anything that you hear in the news, a lot of these stories do make national news. Don't just assume that the law of the land and the way that it went down in that state is going to be how it would be here. So be mindful of your state laws. This was Houston, so the laws in Texas are different than they are here.
Wait, they are?
What?
Imagine that.
Right. California.
Or even, or not only are the laws different, but the interpretation of
Correct.
we have some of the same laws that are just interpreted and enforced differently too.
Very true. Very true. Very good point. So what we have here is we have the story. Here's I'll give you the title. The title is Veteran in Wheelchair Shoots Man Who Tried to Rob Him at Downtown Metro Station. So out of Houston, we have a gentleman in a wheelchair. So right off the bat, he's of a class of people that are considered compromised to a point to where the law may apply a little bit differently to him. But in the story, if you read into it, he was wheelchair bound and he was there at the Metro and a man approached him and tried to take a bag off of his chair. So we have theft, right? There was no mention of any threats, no words, no raised arm, no weapon, no tool, no fear shown other than the taking of property. This gentleman in the wheelchair happens to have a firearm on him. He pulled his firearm from I'm assuming a different bag. He pulled that firearm and shot the person trying to take his things. Gentleman was hit. He was taken to a hospital. He did, as far as we know, make a good full recovery. So this is a situation where a gentleman used a firearm to defend potentially himself, property. Whether he stated that he was in fear, we don't know. The article doesn't give us that information. But what it does give us is that he was using his firearm to defend his property. Is this legal in California? Would this fly in California?
No, not legal.
No, it would not legally. Correct, not as it is. So just know that, and that can even pull into what we were talking about, those image-based decisional drills, situations like this. Sometimes we, out of, having theft, feeling violated, theft can be a form of violation. It can feel uncomfortable. It can make you feel in fear. But does that rise to the threat of fear of death or great bodily harm? It should not. But some people, when they get put in those situations, they take steps that they may not realize that they would do. If you talk through it, you may not realize that you would feel that way, but you get thrown in that situation. Sometimes we take steps that take us a little further than we intended to. In his state, he was not charged. This was in Texas. The laws there, again, are different and interpreted differently. You are able to defend property differently than you can here in California.
In California, that would not have flown.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, of course, don't get confused, listeners. Sometimes your life is in danger because someone is trying to steal your property.
Absolutely.
Meaning that they're willing to, commit murder on you to get to your property.
Correct. You try to take that bag back, and they pull a weapon or they raise an arm. That changes it.
I used to get into that discussion a lot with people way back when we used to have to write good cause statements.
Wait, what were those things?
Yeah, I know, right?
I hated those.
People would say, like, well, gee, what's my good cause? Well, your good cause is that you carry valuable items or whatever. And they'd say, well, I can't protect valuable items, with lethal force. No, they might try to, lethal you to get to these items. And that was always a discussion. I was actually, frankly, in hindsight, kind of amazed at how many people knew that you can't defend, you can't defend property with.
It's California.
Yeah. Yep. So okay. So, you said that he made a full recovery.
He did.
And I want to be, okay. So someone stole a bag from him. He was
Tried to.
Tried to. What does that look like? That he tried to? He grabbed it and couldn't get it off the wheelchair or something, or?
The article doesn't. It doesn't give a lot of clarity to it. It just simply says the gentleman's a loosely used term, attempted to remove the bag and to steal it.
So he and you mentioned this, but he very well could have been worried for his life.
Could have been. The article doesn't speak to that, so that would be. We can kind of talk to both ways of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow,
Leaves a lot for interpretation.
It does.
Well, thank you, Texas. So why don't we touch on while we're talking about carrying for self-defense? there was a little bit of movement in the Renna case. I think we talked a little bit about it last week, but let's touch on it again.
Some
Which,
fantastic
by the way,
movement.
the judge did a really great job. Which, by the way, fun fact, the judge in that case is married to District Attorney Summer Stephan. How about that?
Wow.
You know what that means? Nothing. Doesn't mean anything. But it's kind of interesting. So
Trivia.
the judge, what happened was there was the Bolin case up in Orange County. And they said, yeah, you know what? These microstamps and a couple other of these features that you can't find on any, all three of them you can't find on any gun, and therefore no guns can be added to the list. That's unconstitutional. So we're going to put an injunction, and then we're going to stay the injunction, and then we're going to let them appeal. But still, we're pretty sure it's unconstitutional. That caused the Renna case, which is, if you're a San Diego County gun owners, you're a plaintiff in the Renna case, because San Diego County gun owners is a plaintiff in that case. The Renna case, the judge came out and said, yep. And the Renna case, interestingly, one of the big differences between the Bolin case and the Renna case is much broader. So if you look at the Renna case, if they were in a vacuum, if the Bolin case won, it would most likely get rid of microstamping. If the Renna case wins, it'll get rid of the whole kit and caboodle, the entire roster. So it's interesting. But the judge moved and said, hey, at least this is unconstitutional. At least this portion is clearly unconstitutional. Again, stayed his injunction. So it's no change in business yet. It's going to take a long time. The other thing is, even if they do have an injunction, all these gun manufacturers have to still get added to the roster.
Which will still take time.
Take a lot of time.
And money.
And money. So we're talking 6-12 months. If tomorrow,
if they want to do that.
Yeah. Well, if the injunction happens, which, and they get through the appeal or whatever, we're talking, it would take 6 to 12 months just for the manufacturers to, just for you to start seeing a Gen 5 on a.
But that's a whole new market for them, though. And think about how us Californians have been deprived of all of these guns that we want from all these manufacturers. I mean, it would be a gold mine, I would think, in a sense, for all these manufacturers.
I think so first off, California buys more firearms than any other state.
Even though we're so anti-gun.
Any other state, including Texas.
What makes you think the left is just going to lay down?
Oh, they're going to go down fighting.
They're going to go down fighting, but they're going to go down.
But
yeah,
not the left, but the anti-gunners.
It's not going to take. It's not going to happen in a year. They're going to drag that because they got way more money than we got.
No. Yeah, you're right. What I was saying was, if it happened, it would take 6 to 12 months.
So you say
the
best case scenario.
Yeah, even in a best case scenario, it's not like boom, you can just go buy whatever you want. They still have to go through. If the Renna case wins, there's a chance that whole entire roster just goes away. But the most likely scenario is that it'll just be, possible for manufacturers to add firearms to the roster, but then it'll take them 6 to 12 months just to get those firearms onto the roster.
You know how many times I hear a day, oh yeah, the gun roster is going away. That means I can buy a Gen 5 tomorrow. And I had to explain to them, that's not the case, guys.
What would you buy if the roster didn't exist?
SIG 365.
Very popular choice.
Yep.
Alicia,
for my carry gun.
What do you got?
Oh, I'm thinking a Hellcat.
Ooh, that too.
Me too. I think
that's on my list.
That Hellcat, it came out and people are so excited about it.
And you know what's funny is I am not a Springfield fan at all, but I like the Hellcat.
And if memory serves, and if my understanding is correct, that Hellcat was built from the ground up. It wasn't like it's
very different, which is why I'm okay with it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. So it's not like they took an XD and just put a new coat of paint on it.
Correct. Nope.
They it's from the ground up. Which I've never owned a 1911. What?
I haven't either.
I'm picking one up tomorrow.
Oh, really? What'd you buy?
It came from a friend who passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's a sentimental. It's a Rock Island.
Well, if I ever do I was looking at the TRP through Springfield. So if I ever do get a 1911, it'll most likely be. If I ever do get a 1911, most likely be a Springfield Armory. So I don't have anything against them. Not a big XD fan, but that Hellcat. Oh my gosh, their marketing just got it seeped into my soul. Like how this thing is that good?
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see. I think that probably is the first thing I'd buy. I don't know if I'd buy it. I don't know if I'd buy a Gen 5.
We would all buy something off roster that we can't have now just because we could.
Just because we can.
Yeah. And then you're just going to see the market on all these manufacturers skyrocket in California and be like, oh my gosh, look at all the money we could have made all along.
Well, if you look long term, let's say 5 years or midterm is probably more accurate. The assault weapons ban. If you break it down, you got if the assault weapon ban goes away, if the mag ban goes away, of course now we're all carrying, and then if so they had a ban on CCWs, that went away. And then the ban on pistols. If all those goes away, if the roster ban goes away, and of course CCW, blah, blah, huge economics behind those things going away.
Huge wins for the Second Amendment too.
Huge wins for the Second Amendment, but every shop out there, all their customers will again become potential customers because now they all got to go out and buy new stuff.
And now you're going to have lines long in these gun shops just waiting to buy everything they couldn't have before.
There you go.
And they are still law-abiding people.
There you go.
Exactly.
It's only $5.85.
What's $5.85?
The Hellcat.
The Hellcat.
Oh yeah.
But not in California.
No.
Of course not.
It'll be at a premium.
$15.85.
Yeah, you'll be paying a premium
Sounds
for all
about right.
those off-roster guns whenever they can be available here because manufacturers will know they can do it.
Not ridiculous.
A self-defense event happens in seconds. And the time it takes to listen to this commercial, your life could change forever. And I pray you're never forced to shoot in self-defense. But if you must, then you must be ready. And that's why USCCA exists. Because every responsibly armed American should have the training and education to navigate a self-defense situation. And should you ever need it, the 24/7 critical response team is right there for you. And to discover more about USCCA, visit uscca.com/GOR. Act now because the life you save could be your own. uscca.com/GOR.
Forever.
Exactly.
Name that movie reference. Okay. Why don't we do Stump My Nephew? And Desi, why don't you try to stump my nephew?
I will try to stump the nephew, but aren't you going to set this up for me because I messed it up last time?
So every week we have our favorite segment, very last. Last is, but not least, Stump My Nephew. We found out that my nephew, Sam, the gunman, is extremely good at gun trivia. So if you send us a question that has to do with firearms, Second Amendment, or related, and we use it on the air, you'll get a hat or a shirt. And if you stump my nephew, then we'll give you something cool, some kind of special prize, maybe tickets to gun prom, or we'll see.
Awesome. Sam, are you there?
Yeah, how are you guys?
We're great. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So today's question comes from Javier, I had to say it that way, from San Diego. And his question is, which firearm was officially protested by Germany during World War I?
Wait, read that again?
What firearm was officially protested by Germany during World War I?
It's exactly what you
Javier
said.
from San Diego, thanks very much for writing in. Now, if you really want to split hairs, there are two answers, but really two models that were used by the U.S. Army and collectively called the trench gun. They were trench shotguns. One was a modification of the Winchester Model 12, and there was another one that was, I think, a Remington 97, I think. I don't remember. But the Imperial German Army raised an official protest on the grounds that trench shotguns were inhumane weapons of warfare. And allegedly they said that any soldier they caught carrying a shotgun or shotgun ammunition would be summarily executed as a war criminal. And the Allies retorted with, well, you guys have flamethrowers, so any one of your soldiers we catch with a flamethrower will do the same. Now, how official these communications were is a little bit unclear to me. It wasn't like they were sitting around a table yelling at each other over this stuff, but the legends exist, and there is some basis in reality there.
Can you believe that they protested trench guns, shotguns,
Imagine that.
pump action shotguns?
Can you believe it?
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, this was World War I. They were using mustard gas, right, Sam?
Yeah, they were more than happy to use artillery shells, which delivered chemical warfare agents. And the specific reason the Germans were okay with doing that is because the Hague Conventions, to which they were a signatory, specified that it was illegal in warfare to use artillery shells whose sole purpose was to dispense. I don't remember the exact wording, but a lacrimatory agent or some kind of chemical warfare agent. And so the Germans went back and said, aha, it says sole purpose. So if we develop artillery shells that deliver gas and fragmentation, then we're technically in the right.
Unbelievable.
Jerks.
You know, I don't know if you guys are fans of history, but Germany's a little suspect.
You think?
They we might want to keep an eye on Germany.
Yeah, I think.
Norm Macdonald did a bit on that. God rest his soul.
Norm, God, I love Norm. I miss Norm so much. I miss him every day.
Well, Sam, let me give you the answer that I have here because I think it's at least worth reading. So you had, at least in my eyes, part of the answer right. The answer that I have in front of me is the Winchester Model 97 pump-action shotgun. And here is the little blurb that I have underneath it. So American troops used the shotgun led to a diplomatic protest. Ironically, the protest came from Germany, which during World War I had unleashed on its enemies such the instruments of killing as the Zeppelin airship bomber, the Maximum MG-08 machine gun, and the Type 93 U-boat, the Big Bertha howitzer, the Paris gun, and of course, chlorine gas. The Model 97 quote-unquote trench gun, as it was quickly came to known, was the brainchild of William G. Eager of Valdosta, Georgia, a trained soldier using the Model 97 trench gun in slam-fire mode. Holding down the trigger while pumping could unleash 6 blasts in a matter of seconds.
It's crazy. Awesome job. Sam, Sam, have you ever shot a Model 12?
I haven't shot a trench gun before. If anyone listening wants something that's sort of like a trench gun but isn't really into collecting historical curios and relics, Mossberg offers a model they call the 590 Retrograde, and you can get it stock with a heat shield and a bayonet lug, at least in my neck of the woods. I don't know if California has something special to say about that, but it looks very much like a trench gun, but you get all that parts compatibility and good value of a Mossberg.
Well, you own a 12, right?
I own a 1200 and a 1300, which are much later Winchester models.
They're like more sporting versions, and then I think that 1300, the 12 turned into the 1200, turned into the 1300, and then I think their newest version of it is it's called like a PDX or something like that, or
SXP, Super X Pump.
Yeah, which that thing is awesome. It's very cool, but it's a direct line. It's Model 12 DNA. It's not, it's very, very similar action, et cetera, et cetera. What is again Winchester? What?
So there was the Winchester Model 1897, and the Winchester Model 12 is somewhat related.
Yep. And then 1200, and then 1300. What's the latest?
Super X Pump, SXP.
Super X Pump. Awesome. All right. What's your article, or what's your blog this week?
My blog post from this past Monday was about it's called something like Jack of all guns or master of one. And it might be a little bit of a controversial post. I don't know if I make my point well, but my point is basically that there are some people out there who intentionally limit themselves to, okay, I'm going to get really, really good at running my specific handful of firearms that I have, and I'm not going to touch anything else because I just want to be really good at shooting what I have. And I talk about how not only does that really suck the fun out of shooting and turn a hobby into just another form of work to do, but that it also isn't necessarily a good idea. A lot of the really, really good shooters I have known are people who will shoot all kinds of stuff and learn about all sorts of different platforms, the different manipulations, and try to learn something from each one.
That's awesome. What inspired you to write that? That's an interesting article and take?
Well, I don't want to get too specific, even though I know he isn't listening to this. But a few years ago, I used to work with a gentleman who would not shoot any semi-auto rifle that was not an AR-15, period. And I mean, yeah, I like AR-15s too. Everyone does. They're great. But his justifications for doing so were, in my opinion, really kind of dumb. And I'm not going to list all of them. I list some of them in the blog post.
Yeah. Yep, you did.
But his excuse was basically, oh, well, I want to be really, really good at shooting just AR-15s. Like, okay, that's fine, I guess. But I have known plenty of people who were better at shooting AR-15s than he was, who also shot other stuff. It's just focusing on one specific firearm. I think is really not a healthy thing to do.
Awesome job. Thank you as always. Appreciate your writing. Next week we should talk a little. We only have a couple minutes left, but next week we should talk more about how you've been picked up by other sources. There are other distribution channels that are putting your articles out, and because you're doing such a good job. So let's talk more about that next week. And thanks so much.
Sure, yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah.
Thanks as always for having me on. Thank you everyone for listening, and have a good night.
Thanks,
All right.
Sam.
You too, buddy.
Thanks for watching this episode from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns and the Second Amendment. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just do a search for Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Don't forget to support our sponsors. Click on the links in the show notes and support the businesses that support your Second Amendment rights. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.